So I want to talk
Love it, love
about
it, definitely.
how Brawlhalla likes to be sneaky. They like, they don't. You gotta use your little your brain muscles at the lab of what Brawlhalla is and does. I think they inadvertently test things which people don't realize. And so I'm not sure if we've had this conversation with you, but like
What?
the crossovers, while crossovers are cool, crossovers are more than crossovers. Crossovers are technically, I found, a way for them to test out new tech in the game. And like, maybe you realize that now, maybe you've never seen that, maybe you don't even know what I'm talking about. But crossovers, while they have they have things, they look cool, they try new tech in the game. And new tech that technically ends up making it to the game. And what I mean by that is usually some sort of attribute feature in it. Yeah. Is it usually an attribute or feature in a crossover that you're like, oh, it's cool, but you don't really think about it. And then a new character ends up getting the move. Or a new skin, whatever. But it's one of those things where it makes it. Let's give the example. Aside maybe the first crossover, which was what? Shovel Knight?
Yeah.
Which, really, it tested everything. Just tested crossovers. So, I guess that counts for something. It tested crossovers. Okay. So, and then I'll show you. But basically, let's talk crossovers, right? Now, Shovel Knight, I don't have anybody. That's funny enough, but I don't have anybody. But Shovel Knight technically is the first crossover. What it did right was be a crossover. And so it did the whole like, well, what do crossovers do? They're the same move of the character, they just have a new effect to them and make them look slightly different. And initially when they first made it, they made them look slightly different. That was like an interesting feature for Brawlhalla. Would you agree?
Yeah, I guess. I don't think that would be too hard.
Yeah. So then, I remember that this was discussed. The next crossover was Hellboy. So I have Hellboy. And they did something like they said, oh, we made it that like and that's not a feature. I'm really random. I'm really confused as to why they said that was a feature. But basically they said, oh, his dominant glove hand that you would see, or you would see the other hand or whatever, when you turn over, you'd see that dominant hand on the other side of him. And it was like a tech at the time in 2019 that was hard to do. Just like, oh, like to make him turn over and it's like the other kind of skin. BMG is clever, and they're clever in the sense that like we talked the whole game about how like they don't use experimental like the way they should, and they don't absolutely not. But what they
said that they don't.
yeah, but what they do is they kind of sneak things in and people don't realize. And what that means is I think crossovers in the game is their way of testing things while obviously having some sort of license and stuff, and people don't really think about it. So initially the thought that was Shovel Knight became they started making crossovers. So it's the same characters. They didn't make them new characters, and they just made the signature effects different looking. And initially it was just slightly. So that was like the whole big thing in this game, was changing that up. Hellboy became like his dominant hand, which is he only has one big hand, which shows up on the outside of any time he turns around. I don't know why that would be hard, and that's not even accurate, but that's something that they did in the game where they're like, oh, his dominant hand shows up in the outside hand or whatever. So what I mean by that is that ended up being on Petra. Petra's hand in the inside stays the way it is, while whatever gloves that she has, whatever, skin or whatever, every time she switches side, the inside hand is the hand that looks like it's raptured from Darkheart. That comes from Hellboy, that tech. Whatever that tech is. Because I
just figured it was just a change of graphics. Like, I didn't think it was going to be anything, like, advanced. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. Like, you look, even the color of the hand that she has inside is always a different color because that's the hand that's dominated by like that's Darkheart or whatever. But that
Yeah, I see
when she turns over, it's always still the inside hand. It's not like the outside hand, and that comes from Hellboy, the whole like thing or whatever, because of the way they made his glove and XYZ. So that's what that is. Adventure Time didn't technically do anything new. The only thing it really did was make the moves, the signatures, some of them like look completely different now. Like they leveled up from like what it can look like. So it went from like, oh, Shovel Knight, and like, oh, the effects can look slightly different, or it could just be in the same place, to Jake turns into a car instead of Core, yeah, rolling as a boulder, and it's like a whole different looking signature. So that became like a new thing. To give you a good example, Lara Croft. Lara Croft, they tested 2 skins on one character on one buy. So like, you get 2 skins for her on one buy, and they tested that out. They hadn't really done that. Oh, they had done it again. I'm sorry. So they tested that out as a thing. They're like, oh, well, you know, it has 2 different lock animations. It's the same skin, same effects, but it has 2 different lock-ons, and they look different. That's a big deal, because that technically is what Munin is. They have Munin, and they have Hugin. Right, that's how you say it, Hugin. So there's Munin, sorry. And then there's Hugin. And Hugin has a different lock animation. That comes from them doing the crossover for Tomb Raider. Because Tomb Raider, you buy one crossover, you get both skins, and they both have different lock-ons, even though the effects and stuff are different. They are the same. They're just 2 different looking skins with 2 different lock-on animations. So that's the big deal with that or whatever. And that's, if you look at Tomb Raider, and the only reason why I'm not doing this on the other screen is because there's no separate macros in this game, so I want to save my guns and stuff. But she has the guns from the original game, and then she has the bow from the new games. That's basically how that works. Here's another good one: The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead. You think that's nothing new there, right? Not true. The Walking Dead is Daryl, and if you look, Daryl actually has 2 knives that he holds. He holds like combat knives. They're held by 2 hands, his hands, because it was weird to think this man, you know, from a real whatever, is holding katars as his character. So they made it that like, oh, the katars are technically now 2 hands that holds like combat knives. And I'm not 100%, but I think there's another character that does that holds. Now when you put katars on someone else that are those combat knives, it's hands holding it, which is hilarious to me, but that looks cool. So I think I don't know if there's a character or there's a skin that basically has that someone is holding now, like some sort of like katar or knife type thing or something like that. I don't even know. I have to look into it, but I'll bet money it's not the last time you're gonna see that. So there's that.